it does not work. So we have to check into that. All right, so we're good to go. Sorry for the delay, folks. Back to text 30, which reads, Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya gyatma chetasa nirasir nirmamo bhutva yud yasha vigata jwara. And the verse translation is, therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. So very wonderful verse. Krishna is giving, kind of summing it all up for us. Two of the Sanskrit words, adhyatma and cetasa, with full knowledge, by consciousness. So by being conscious of Krishna, this is what he is advising Arjuna. Surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy. Indications of the false ego are twofold. First one is identity, I am, and the second one is ownership, proprietorship. Those are indications of the false ego. I am white, I am black, I am male, I am female, etc. All of the different layers of misconception, according to Bhagavad Gita, there are misconceptions because the real nature of the self is that we're spirit soul, we're spiritual beings that are enveloped within the material energy. That is what Krishna detailed in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that we went over, how he, on one hand, points out our spiritual nature, our true spiritual nature, and on the other hand, that we are enveloped in these material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. And specifically, ego is referring to false ego or misidentification. So when Krishna is saying to the understanding that we can get from this verse is how to perform karma yoga. How do we work? There's that one verse that we read not too long ago. Work which is done in relationship to the Supreme. That work is freeing us from false ego, freeing us from misconception. That work is freeing us from bondage to the material world. But work done without that recognition, without that consciousness, without that full awareness, that work is binding. So both works may seem the same. And I've given this example before. Both works may seem the same. Eating, different types of activities that we do, family life, etc. They may seem like they're running a parallel course, but the difference is, as Krishna is indicating here, it's done in a mood of surrender, surrendering your works unto me. So that means in consciousness of. We read another verse in the third chapter where Krishna says that the whole universe is designed in such a way that there has to be cooperation. There's cooperation between the men, humanity, and the demigods. There's reciprocation in that regard, and all in reference with the central point or the focal point in service to God, in service to the Supreme. That Prabhupada specifically translates the word as cooperation. So the cooperative spirit is the design of the universe. And when we are not cooperative, then misery is there. The adi-atmika, which means misery which is caused by the body-mind, adi-bhautika, misery which is caused by other living entities, and adi-daivika, which are miseries which are caused by natural forces like hurricanes and heat waves and cold and all of these different things. These threefold miseries are the result. So when we have the mindset, we cultivate the mindset, and that's what bhakti is all about. Bhakti is about cultivating a mindset that can link or connect everything that we do in relationship to the Supreme. We act, but we act as an offering, because the word that Prabhupada uses and Krishna uses in the Gita is yajna, or sacrifices. Sacrifices done in cooperation actually frees us from that mindset, that proprietorship mindset, because it's hard to imagine how to work, but no, don't be attached to the results. It's a concept that many people have a hard time wrapping their mind around. I'm going to work. There are going to be fruits to my action. For instance, I go to work. The fruits of my work, my salary. I get a salary. So how is it that I'm not going to be attached to getting a salary? You're not working as a donation. You're working, and there are results to that work. But the very specific thing that Krishna is saying is you're entitled to your work, that you must do, but the results are an offering to the Supreme. And then everything else is taken care of. Everything else is satisfied. So when we have that spirit of connecting everything, linking everything to that's surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me. Why do we study the sacred texts, specifically the Bhagavad Gita? If you study any of the yoga systems that are out there, there's 6 darshans of the Vedas, 6 methods of understanding the absolute according to the Vedas. All of them refer to Bhagavad Gita. So that's why the emphasis I place on Bhagavad Gita for someone who is actually on a spiritual path, because the Bhagavad Gita is so deep, so profound in knowledge, in wisdom, giving us an understanding of human life and its purpose. So when what we're doing right now, going through it verse by verse, discussing it, you should, any questions that you have, you should write those questions down. Let's discuss those questions. Let's get clear on what is being said, what's being asked of us, what is the knowledge that Krishna is giving us. So surrender. And I found that surrender is easier when one is in full knowledge. We're not seeking blind faith. Prabhupada says that in the 4th chapter. And one purport, one commentary that he gives, he said, blind faith is herein rejected. That's in the 4th chapter, the 34th verse, when he's talking about having a spiritual teacher, serving that teacher, etc. In the purport, Prabhupada said, no, we're not interested in blind faith. So surrendering does not mean blindly. Surrendering is bolstered. The desire to surrender your works to Krishna is when you know what is the result of that. Jagnartat karmino nyatra. So I know when I am working with the mindset of offer, it's an offering. It's a mood of gratitude. When I have that mindset, then that work, nyatra, it doesn't bind us. It's actually liberating. It frees us from false ego, from the misconception, thinking that we're the body as opposed to who we really are as the spirit soul. It frees us. But if we don't cultivate that mindset, if we're not in the mood of surrendering, we're only surrendering to our desire. Later on, Krishna is going to talk about that. surrendering to your desire, because Arjuna is asking later on, as we progress in this chapter, what is it that compels us to act in a particular way? And Krishna answers that very specifically. So, knowledge of me, Bhagavad Gita, Sangha. Sangha means association with those who are advanced in this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and other sacred texts, without desires for profit. This is a very important understanding. It is not a business to be a teacher in the bhakti yoga process, or any yoga process for that matter. It's not a business. It's an actual sharing of wisdom that one has been blessed with. In the bhakti yoga system in particular, we understand that bhakti yoga is the system of grace. It is the yoga system of mercy. In other words, we can only progress in our understanding and our relationship with the Supreme by God's mercy, by God's blessing. So this is a very important thing to understand, a very important principle to understand. You
taste it first.
Okay. We are understanding this principle, and desires for profit means that you are giving of yourself freely so that others can have some benefit in terms of the advancement on their spiritual path, and not for name, fame, or adoration, distinction, etc., not for profit. And profit doesn't only mean money. It means recognition. It means fame. It means so many different things, in relationship to self-aggrandizement. So, with no claims to proprietorship. So, again, the false ego wants to claim, this is mine. I am this identity, and everything I acquire is mine. That's the nature of the false ego. That's what it pushes us towards. But as we advance on our spiritual path, cultivating in knowledge, cultivating the mindset.
Let me know if you don't want to.
Then someone has their microphone on. I don't know who that is. Please. So this cultivation of that mindset will help us to advance. Okay, so what does he tell? What does he tell Arjuna after that is there? With no claims, surrendering, no desires for profit, being in full knowledge, then you do your duty. Arjuna's duty as a Kshatriya, as a warrior, was to fight. And he was trying to dodge that duty. He was trying not to do that duty. He had reasons. The reasons, from his perspective, were dharmic, meaning that they were responsible. He wanted to show compassion. He didn't want to commit sinful activities. There were so many reasons that he gave that one may say are dharmic, but we should understand that there's two types of dharma: naimittika dharma and nitya dharma. Naimittika dharma means you act in a responsible way according to certain laws of the universe. But they're temporary. They're in relationship to your temporary situation. Nitya dharma, another word that Prabhupada uses is sanatana dharma, is your eternal duty. So everything is in service to our eternal duty as understanding the nature of the soul and its relationship to God. Everything. We spoke about the wheels of humanity, how we pursue life, kama, artha, moksha, and dharma, meaning sense gratification, economic development, acting responsibly according to directions of the greater sacred texts, and ultimately liberation. But all the first three of gratification and economic development and dharma, they're all in service to the final Purushartha, and that is moksha, liberation, or coming to understand what our nitya dharma is, what our service to the Supreme is. Everything in our life. This is the lesson in the Bhakti Yoga teachings and also in the Bhagavad Gita. This is the single pointed lesson that Krishna is giving us. You're here now in this body with a certain psychophysical nature, influenced by particular modes of material nature. You are in that particular situation, and while you are in that situation, you have to act dutifully. But as we progress, as we advance in our understanding, then we realize that all that we're doing, all the dharma, the kama, the artha, this is all in service to the ultimate goal, which is moksha, or liberation. Now, from the bhakti perspective, moksha has a different meaning. It means developing or cultivating our loving relationship with Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whereas in other yoga systems, moksha means something else: to merge into the totality of spiritual energy, Brahman, to have the realization of the super soul or God within the heart. But specifically, when we are referring to Bhakti Yoga, as we'll be talking about in chapters 7 through 12, it means cultivating our knowledge of and relationship with the Supreme Lord. And love is, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to do. So the Krishna says this is the mindset, and in that mindset, fight. Do your duty, Arjuna. That's text 30. Text 31 reads as follows: those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. So on one way, he's saying, do like this. Surrender your works. Cultivate full knowledge of me. No desires for profit, fame, adoration, distinction. No claims to proprietorship. And don't be lethargic. In this world, we, according to the modes of material nature, the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance, people are either aggressive to obtain their desires or lethargic. That's usually the influence of passion, or rajagun, is to be aggressive, to want to achieve, to do, to be real into doership. And the effects of tamagun, the mode of ignorance, is to be lethargic, to be lazy, not really have much motivation, enthusiasm to do anything or to achieve anything. So Krishna is saying here, free from that lethargy. That lethargy doesn't suit you as a Kshatriya. You are a doer in my service, Arjuna. So 31, executing according to the injunctions that are given in the sacred texts like Bhagavad Gita, how to act in that detached mindset, in that mindset where we're not trying to enjoy the fruits of our work, in the mindset which is free from proprietorship, in the mindset which is free from lethargy. With those things in mind, we act accordingly. Also, there has to be faith. Act with faith that if I do, I will see the clarity. My intelligence will become purified by acting in such a way, because it's when the intelligence is, excuse me, inhabited by lust, by passion, then it doesn't see clearly. It sees in relationship to self-gain. When the intelligence is inhabited by tamagum, ignorance, it can't see at all. It just goes from one day to another, how to fulfill the immediate needs. Very, very immediate oriented, with no consideration of the future. It's like a person who goes through life and has no consideration of the future. When I get old, how am I going to support myself? Where am I going to live? No consideration for that. An intelligent person has some consideration for that. How am I going to live my elderly years, and where, and how am I going to support myself, and all. There is some consideration in that regard, only because you want to remain free from encumbrances that will stop us from performing our meditation, performing our swadhyaya, or our study of the sacred text, performing the actions that we've been cultivating in our process, in our sadhana, that will help us to be clear-minded at the point of death and be fixed on the Supreme. So faithfulness, how does one develop faith? That's nicely answered in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And one commentary by Srila Prabhupada, he says, who you associate with. This is real. And I always have conversations with my son about the importance of who you hang out with. The old saying, birds of a feather flock together. And, especially if you want to be, you are subject to being influenced. You're not so much of an influencer, but you are more influenced by association. And we all have a tendency to be influenced by our association. But faith, in what I'm doing is demonstrated by commitment, conviction in what I'm doing. That the sadhana that I'm performing, the mindset that I'm purposely cultivating, that this is leading me down the path towards the ultimate goal of life. And that is, developing my loving relationship with the Supreme. So faithfulness is there without envy. What does Krishna tell Arjuna in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Idam tu te guyatamam pravaksham yanasudve. That means because you don't have envy in your heart, then I reveal to you this wisdom. So Krishna is saying it here in the 3rd chapter too. This is a quality that we need in order to be successful in becoming free from the bondage of fruitive actions. And envy sometimes is misconstrued. Envy, the way it's applied in Bhakti Yoga, envy means I am the center of the universe. The universe revolves around me and my needs. Krishna explains a non-envious mentality is the Supreme Lord is the center of the universe, and everything revolves around the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. This is the difference. So when envy is applied in context of the Bhagavad Gita, it means more of the self-centered, false, egoistic perspective on your life. So when you become free from envy by virtue of good association, by virtue of studying these sacred texts, swadhyaya, by virtue of immersing yourself in meditation, japa meditation on the holy names of God, all of these things have that effect that wins the approval and the appreciation of the Supreme, and therefore we become blessed by mercy, by the process of mercy of the Lord. We become blessed with understanding of what we should do and how we should do it. So Krishna is saying these are the techniques. This is the mindset, the methodology by which we become free from bondage to fruitive activities. And that is insight into how we can work, be entitled to work, but not entitled to the fruits. We can see with a purified intellect, which is full of gratitude for everything that we have. The more we practice the attitude of gratitude, the happier we become. When we can actually see, everything that I have, rather than, see the glass half full rather than the glass half empty. When we can do like that and stop complaining and stop, blaming, and we can say that and see very clearly all that I've been given. Many of us here, particularly here in the United States, many of us we have a nice place to live in. Every day we are eating nicely. Every day we have friendships with people that care for us, and family members that care for us. We have opportunities and facilities that allow us to pursue our spiritual journey unencumbered. The encumbrance comes from the mind. And really, when we cultivate an attitude of gratitude, it kind of defeats that the mind's interference, the mind's objections, to the recognition of the good fortune that we actually have, that we're actually blessed with. So karma yoga involves gratitude, as does bhakti. We are grateful. We see with that mind that sees abundance rather than the mind that seems scarcity. We focus on the scarcity, and this takes maturity. It really takes maturity of the mind and the intelligence, but it also takes an element of faith, and it takes full knowledge, as Krishna is saying. The more we become immersed in understanding of our principle of life, the universal principles of life that we follow, that knowledge is fortifying. It's strengthening. It strengthens the intelligence by purification of the intelligence. It's when the intelligence becomes weakened by the influence of passion and ignorance, then it becomes subservient to the mind and the senses. It becomes the servant of the mind and senses, when in fact its duty is to control, to keep in check the mind and the senses from taking us away from the source of happiness, which is our connection to the Supreme Lord. It's just as if, what's the duty of a parent? Now, a parent we have children. So if we let our children do whatever they want to do, and as parents, maybe you have those days where you just feel like, oh, I just can't get into it. I know I was a teacher in high school, and it was a pretty tough high school in Paterson, New Jersey. And it was an all boys high school. And there were just some days I didn't want to be a disciplinarian. I wanted to teach, I wanted to educate, but I was always having to rope in the wild minds of testosterone charged male students between the age of 14 and 18. And, some days you just don't want to do battle with that. So our mind is incessant in terms of its demands, and it requires the strong intelligence which comes from purification. and the process by which purifies the mind and keeps it strong and keeps it sharp and keeps it determined. What's the sign of strength? Clarity, determination. These are the signs of a strong mind. Clear perspective, determination, no matter what. And when I mention gratitude, when the intelligence is purified, it's easy to be grateful, because the mantra that can be chanted in this regard is, God does not do things to me, but for me. We can actually effectively chant that mantra, understand that everything that's being done is for my benefit. It's a lesson. It's to give me a direction and correction. When we get the correction, we have the direction. We're back on path. We're back on course. So these are important principles to understand. And then Krishna, after he says this, follow the injunctions, be faithful, develop faithfulness, without envy, you'll become free. Then in the next verse, text 32, what does he say? He says, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings, disregard the cultivation of knowledge, disregard the duties, the injunctions that are there, and do not follow them, are to be considered bereft of knowledge. So that's, again, the importance. If we don't have knowledge to strengthen and purify our intelligence, then we become bereft of knowledge, and we become befooled and ruined in our endeavors for perfection. What does Krishna mean? Endeavors for perfection. According to Bhagavad Gita, perfection means cultivating that relationship with God, that loving relationship, to be yukta, to be connected through loving service. When we are in love, it is very easy to serve, is it not? If you're a parent, you serve your children, don't you? And why do you do that? So many austerities that parents have to go through. And why? Why have you done that? Because you love that child. You want the best for that child. You'll put your desires aside, what you wanted to do, and you are in service. That's a practical manifestation of love. Same thing, with your spouse or with your family members. You demonstrate love by being willing to give freely, without expectation. So the development of love for God is also developing or cultivating the mindset that I am giving of myself and my actions to God as an offering in service. And it is that service mentality properly utilized, which is the very source of our freedom from the bondage of this material world, freedom from the shackles of the egoistic mind. We break those shackles. We get out of the bondage, and we serve, not for fame or adoration or distinction or profit, but we serve causelessly. We give of ourselves without expectation of return. That's love, that there's an element of selflessness. So endeavors for perfection mean to cultivate that relationship of loving service to God. And this is text 33. I'll try to get all the way through to 40 today. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? There's a big push and also a big industry, for self-awareness. And this is exactly what Krishna is saying, that we can understand our naimitika duties, our dharma, and what we are responsible for. According to the Bhagavad Gita, there's a personality index where it kind of categorizes, Krishna categorizes, different inclinations and mindsets. And one who is knowledge oriented, who has a clarity of perspective, looks to live a life simple and spiritual. He says that's someone that's influenced predominantly by the mode of goodness, or someone who is more managerial, who has the desire to protect. So the categorizes the different levels of personality, an index into a personality, a type. And part of the awareness process, according to Bhagavad Gita, is we recognize what our psychophysical nature is. That's a big, big responsibility for a parent. It's also a huge responsibility for a teacher, someone who's an active teacher in the education system, to understand, the psychophysical nature of others. But the only way that we can do that accurately, clearly, is to first understand our psychophysical nature and to act in accordance with that psychophysical nature. When we act in accordance with that psychophysical nature, we feel satisfied. We're doing the job that we want to do. A lot of people are trapped because of financial pressures into taking the job that they may not be happy with. And, it runs the gamut from a doctor to a lawyer to, all the way down to a janitor. If the demands of a job that we take are causing us distress, then we have to reconsider. Maybe I'm not acting according to my psychophysical nature. Maybe I'm behaving or acting in a way that is contrary to my nature, and that's why it's causing me so much distress. But if I become mindful of who I am and try to act in accordance with that, this is the Bhagavad Gita's recommendation. A man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, recognizes. Just like, sometimes you'll ask kids, oh, do you play sports? No, I'm not really into sports. Or they'll say, yeah, I'm really into sports. It's a nature, it's an inclination. Neither one is wrong. And that's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. One is not higher than the other. It's just what it is. And recognizing what you are, how you've been influenced by your karma and by the influences of the modes of material nature. Recognize that influence and the tendencies that spring up as a result. So, when the kid says, I'm not into sports, and then the father is going, now you gotta be a basketball player like daddy was, or you gotta do this like daddy was, etc., and applies that kind of pressure, the kid's going to suffer. May not be his nature at all. Or, another thing is pushing them to become, go to Yale or Harvard and to become intellectuals. And that may not be their nature also. They may be perfectly happy with a screwdriver and a hammer. And according to Bhagavad Gita, when you recognize your nature, it is your psychophysical nature, and it will be your pathway to an unencumbered progress on your path. So none of it is wrong. None of it is higher than the other. It's just who you are and what you want to do. I mean, what does midlife crisis mean? You often hear the term midlife crisis. I remember when I was in high school, I was a sophomore in high school, and I had a friend, and her father was a an accountant, and he made good money. They lived in a very upscale suburban New Jersey town, and he made good money. But at the age of, in his, I guess, his 40s, like mid 40s or late 40s, he realized that his true love and his true passion was tennis. So he quit his job as an accountant, and he became a tennis teacher. And you can imagine the drop in salary with that. But you know that is the fault of society when we place value on how much you earn rather than how satisfied you are, how much you are pursuing your nature, and how much that is giving you a sense of satisfaction, a sense of peace, and an inspiration to facilitate a more in-depth look at your life and the purpose of life. You see, if someone is in anxiety, anxious all the time, the mind's disturbed like that, it's very hard to get beyond that. And in order to be successful on your spiritual journey, on your inward journey, you can't have that kind of turmoil going on in the mind. That's why Patanjali, when he discusses what is yoga, he says, yogas chitta vritti narodaha. That the mind has to be narodaha. It has to be peaceful. It has to be calm. And then that is yoga, the process that helps the mind to become peaceful and calm. And there are different external techniques to achieve that. And there are internal techniques to achieve that. And basically, it is in service to your progress. So again, you know, when we're talking about understanding your duty, your nature, I mean, Arjuna, for instance, get Arjuna as an example. You know, if Arjuna Prabhupada once was mentioning this, if Arjuna wanted to become a renunciate and went to the Himalayas and he was practicing meditation and living in a life of renunciation in a cave and something and practicing shanti, and then he came out and he saw a person being attacked by a lion or a tiger, he would immediately go and kill that lion or tiger. His nature would spring forth because he was a Kshatriya, and a Kshatriya is a warrior, and a Kshatriya is a protector. So what does Krishna say here? What can repression accomplish? That means that we cannot repress who we really are. We have to embrace it and learn how to take our psychophysical nature and the work we do in conjunction with that and make it as an offering to the Supreme. So it's dual-fold. It's recognizing it, putting that into action, and then the fruits of that action, that properly guided and facilitated action as an offering. So Krishna says, don't repress. This is not going to be successful because repression will eventually backfire. When we're repressing something, we'll eventually get to a point where we will go to where we are, where we were thinking about but putting down. It's like a person who takes the renounced order of life and is inspired to do so because they get respect and recognition for all the wrong reasons. So they may have desires, you know, for associating with a woman intimately, have children, to raise children. They may repress those desires, but eventually what will happen is if they're not making really tangible advancement and leaps and bounds to get beyond that, if there's some kind of impediment or blockage, they have a tendency, like an elastic band, for instance. You take an elastic band, you stretch it. Two things can happen, right? The first thing is if you stretch it too far, it can break. So I've seen, even psychologically, a person break because they were living a lifestyle that was too austere, too renounced. And, they tried, they were repressing certain desires, and then they may have had some psychological issues as a result of that. Or the other thing is, if you give up, you just say, I'm not going to be renounced. I just totally give it up. Then you let go, and it goes back to its normal shape as an elastic band before you stretched it. So the same thing happens. You may uh, practice in a certain way with rigorous and austere and so many different things. But if you become weakened, even at an advanced age, we're not talking young here. That elastic band can go back. Our minds, due to circumstances, can go back to where we really want it to be. Even after years and years of practice of renunciation, whatever the circumstances is, basically the circumstances has the effect of weakening our intelligence. So we no longer can do it anymore. We no longer can live a life of renunciate and pose in that regard. And that's not what Krishna is asking us. Krishna's not asking us to be renunciates. If he was, he would tell Arjuna, yeah, renunciation is better. You should renounce your duty as a Kshatriya. But he doesn't. And I know in my personal association with Srila Prabhupada, he never asked us to do things that were way, way beyond our nature. He always encouraged us. He always encouraged. Prabhupada had an amazing way of encouraging, empowering, and enthusing. Or let me put it another way. Enthusing. He had a way of enthusing and inspiring us, which was encouraging and ultimately empowering. I call them the 3 E's to spiritual success. So, this is what we need to progress, and not some artificial dress or dress code or position. That's not what we need. We need to be authentic. We need to be honest. These are all indicators of clarity of perspective, which is sattva-gun. And the result, one of the immediate results of practicing yoga and the sadhana within yoga is the cultivation of a sattvic mind. And this is how a sattvic mind begins to recognize, to be my authentic self and not to pose in any particular way because I get recognition or adoration or worship or money. Yeah, renunciation can be a big business. You can make a lot of money if you're a renunciate. People have a tendency to be charitable. And if you play that role, and that becomes one of the traps of renunciation, you play that role well, you can make a lot of money. I know in the history of my life that I've seen renunciates with much bigger bank accounts than myself. And, because they've understood the principle that people are basically kind-hearted and generous. So that can be a trap of renunciation. So if you are genuinely a renounced person, if you have genuinely the realization that, entanglement within this material world is not for you, I have no desire for it, then that's okay. But for the most part, I was with Srila Prabhupada when he said, for the most part, and we were all at that time celibate monks. And Prabhupada said that's the best, that's the most conducive. There's not much entanglement by being a celibate monk called brahmachari. But he said, but you must be honest in that regard. Because if you're not honest in that regard, you'll cheat and you won't make advancement. So better, if marriage and family facilitates a calmer mind, a peaceful mind, then that's what you should do. And that's why in the system that Krishna proposes in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter, you can cultivate your spiritual pursuit as a renunciate in 2 ways: as a student of renunciation, which has the choice later on to stop being a renunciate and pursue married life, a family life. Or then the other aspect of renunciation is lifelong, and that's when you take a vow of renunciation. You do it that way, but you could also do it in the ashram of family life. And that is equally an ashram. It equally has its austerities, and it can equally help one if it's their nature. It's facilitating a more steady, peaceful mind. And then that's an ashram, and that will help. That will cause spiritual development. So, yeah, 6:34. Let's see how much time we have here. Let me read a few in a row, okay? There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. It's considered the 2 sides of the same coin, to be attached or to be averse to something. Both of them are forms of the overarching principle of attachment. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Text 35. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. In other words, recognize, soul search, be authentic, do your duty according to who you actually are, what your psychophysical nature is. And even if you're not doing it to the best, then you're still on the correct path. And the Buddha says, if you're facing in the right direction, just keep walking in that. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. 36. Arjuna said, O descendant of Brishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So you get this question Arjuna's asking? So one doesn't want to do it. They're basically a good person, but yet they get into a habit, some kind of sinful habit, some kind of misdirected course of action or choices. And even Arjuna say, don't want to do it, but seems like my mind is pushing me to do it, impelled by force. Krishna answers, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion. And later, when passion digresses, when it goes to ignorance, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So Krishna is saying here, that is that force. Lust can be described as intense desire. So when we have intense desire for gratification, my gratification, only my well-being with no other consideration, that can produce wrath when influenced by ignorance. Text 37. No, I just read that. Text 38. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So Prabhupada describes in the commentary that fire covered by smoke means that one may have a little glimpse of reality, that maybe there's more to this world than just, material pursuit. So they're not fully committed, they're not fully into it, or maybe not clear, but they have a glimpse. So Prabhupada said that's what Krishna means by fire covered by smoke. As a mirror is covered by dust, so a mirror can be easily cleaned. So if one is engaged in the cleansing process, the dust is there. Let me see the way. The dust on the mirror refers to the cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. So lust is still there. Desire is still there, selfless desire, but one is now engaging in a process. And another way that Prabhupada puts it is that one can be dirty, but stepping into the shower. So can you criticize that person for being dirty? No. So there may be dust on the mirror of the mind, which is causing, not really clear perspective of the self. But if you're cleansing the mirror, eventually you will see the reflection. So that's another category of lust. And then the third one is the living, or as the embryo is covered by the womb. And then the embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position. For the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. So that's the 3 degrees of lust that Krishna is talking about here. Text 39, we're going to stop on 39. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So that concludes Krishna's answer to Arjuna. Why am I impelled to act in this way, in this misguided, misdirected way? And that concludes Krishna's instruction or guidance as to why that can occur. So thank you very much for being with me and being so attentive. I will open up the floor. Does anyone have any question, comment, observations, realizations that you would like to share? I personally like questions and your realizations. I really like to hear, what comes about. I see. You're welcome, Prasanna. Thank you for attending. Does anyone have any question, comment, realizations they would like to share with us?
Yeah, me.
Angelica.
Yes. I just curious or clarification I will need probably between the passion and desire or the intensity of a desire, because I think, and personally in applying those into myself, is just like I enjoyed my work, my job, and I recognize myself that I actually do it with passion, and it's not, I'm not thinking of the joy that it causes me, my, the work that I do is just, it just comes naturally for me like that. I feel I like it, I enjoy it, I feel satisfied when I do it with passion. So I'm not sure, I think passion.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, passion. A word has meaning according to context. That's the one thing we have to understand about language. So, to truly understand Rajagum, the mode of passion, it doesn't exactly hit it, because like you're saying, you're expressing an enthusiasm and inspiration that comes from something that you like to do. Architecture. You're an architect, right?
Right.
And you like doing that. So you've found exactly what I was talking about. You found a line of work which is very conducive to your nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you experience what you experience. When Krishna talks about passion, the way it's defined is distress. It's, for one's own benefit, etc. So he gives, certain indicators contextually of what he means by passion. It means thinking that I'm the doer. And then as a result of thinking I'm the doer, then all the results of what I do is meant for my enjoyment. So what you're expressing is, you're taking that word, which has other applications.
Right.
And in this regard, if we were to use synonyms for what you're expressing, we would say enthusiasm, inspiration, and a genuine love for what you do. And that's okay.
Okay.
And then, in your life, you learn, the process of bhakti that you're practicing, the chanting and all the various aspects of bhakti. You just learn how to connect all that enthusiasm. Like, for instance, you're an architect. So you have an ability and the training. Maybe you can help a temple, redesign a space, using that intelligence that you developed in that regard. So that's one practical way you can use what you love to do, the work that you love to do, in service and seva. So yeah, it's not exactly what Krishna's not talking about that.
Okay.
He's not talking about your enthusiasm. In fact, Prabhupada says enthusiasm is necessary if you want to be successful in anything, either material or spiritual. So that kind of enthusiasm just means you're rightly situated. You found a job that can facilitate your spiritual pursuit also.
Yes.
Is that clear? Is that clear enough?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Anyone else would like to ask a question or share with us, eager listeners here, some realization that you might have had in this last 10 verses that we were doing? Did any point that Krishna made cause an aha moment in terms of your own life? I know I have those moments when I'm reading Gita. I've been reading Gita since 1971. And I'm always amazed that even, 53, 54 years later, I read something that I've read numerous times and I get it in a way that I didn't get it before. It's because the Gita is it's a dynamic wisdom. It really has levels and depths, and we can dive deeper and deeper and deeper into it. So, yes, Prasanna Prabhu, how can I serve you?
Oh, so please. When we are talking about working with passion and dovetailing it to as Krishna's wishes, or offering the results of that activity to Krishna, a lot of times most of our activities are not, we are not passionate about certain things.
Right.
Like there are some days when we work, but our mind is just not there. And there are other days when we work, when our mind is totally into the work that we are doing, you forget about lunch, and
I
before you know it, the end of the day.
yes.
Time has no effect on you,
Yeah. So
right?
how do we reconcile these two opposites? In my opinion, is my question. Because for
Well,
me, it's like there are at least 2 days when I'm into it, and there'll be 3 to 4 days I'm just off of it, and I'm really mad at myself.
yeah. Prabhupada was asked the question once. He said, the devotee asked him, um, when I'm not feeling enthusiastic about something, how do I become enthusiastic? And Prabhupada's response was, like you're enthusiastic, and it will come. And also Sinclair Lewis, who's an author and a philosopher, he said the same thing, in relationship to loving one's neighbor. I don't really love my neighbor. And he said, act as if you love your neighbor and it will come. And Prabhupada's response was, act as if you are enthusiastic. In other words, we're grappling with the mind on a daily basis, are we not? And there are so many reasons which are causing that fight. Sometimes we don't get enough sleep. Sometimes we don't eat properly. Sometimes we may have a disagreement that throws off our balance. Sometimes the news of the world, what's going on, all of these things, have a tendency to jolt us a bit. But the force or the power of enthusiasm and acting enthusiastic, knowing, and that's why I emphasized in full knowledge. Krishna says being in full knowledge. It's not artificial. Sometimes people will say, well, that's not real. It's artificial. No, it's not. Because when you put an iron rod in contact with fire, what happens to that iron rod? Eventually, that iron rod becomes white hot and becomes like fire. So when we put something, for instance, our lack of enthusiasm, and then we muster up the attitude of enthusiasm, even may not be there, but we say, okay, this is my service to Krishna. And my wife and I are always speaking about that because my wife is she's a doctor, a medical doctor, but she's also an Ayurvedic doctor, and her real love, her real passion is Ayurveda. And she's one of the most determined people in the world. And if she has that kind of downslide, she always says no. She doesn't let her mind go there. No, this is my duty to Krishna. Or sometimes I'll reinforce that. So that's the kind of attitude. No, you say, Prasanna, I'm doing this not for me, not for my own enjoyment. I'm doing this. This is part of my Jagnarta Karmanonyatra. This is part of my offering, my sacrifice. This is part of my puja, my worship to Krishna. This is the offering. And I'm going to be enthusiastic. Because the mind has so many interferences there. We have to develop these techniques which pushes past those interferences. Does that address your?
Sounds a lot like the no gap philosophy that you were
Exactly.
mentioning a few days ago.
Yes, exactly right.
Just keep the mind busy.
Yeah, because Prabhupada tells the story of the genie in the bottle. This young man this would be a real abbreviated version. This young man happens to get a bottle or container and discovers there's a genie inside. And so the genie says, your wish is my command. And the young man is like ecstatic. And, now the genie is going to fulfill all of his wishes. But the genie said, but there's one condition. And the young man says, what? And he said that as soon as you stop giving me things to do, wishes to fulfill, then I will kill you. So the man says, okay, okay. And so he says, I want a big house. Yes, your wish is my big house. I want $1 billion. Yes. And the young man begins in a very short time. He finds out that he's running out of desires, and he's thinking about what the genie says. So that's the nature of the mind. We have to keep it engaged. Otherwise it gets us. And the no gap philosophy is exactly what Prabhupada meant. That somehow or another, we have the cell phone. It could be the cause of our demise, the weapon of mass distraction, or it can remind us continuously of Krishna. You can immediately pull up a verse in Bhagavad Gita. You can immediately go to a kirtan or to a lecture. I have numerous notes on different subject matters, like karma yoga, for instance. I have my notes here on karma yoga. So we can, if we have that consciousness, okay, I'm slipping away. My enthusiasm, I'm slipping away. What do I do? How do I fill that gap? And it requires a mindfulness. And when we apply that, then that weapon of mass distraction becomes our weapon of attraction to the lotus feet of Krishna.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
Getting back on track is the difficult part.
Yeah. It takes practice. Really takes a lot of practice. Everyone who is on a path to achieve something wonderful has to face that reality. An athlete, a musician, a mathematician, anyone that's trying to, progress, the musician will come, I don't want to practice. I have this problem with my son. He could be a brilliant musician, but he doesn't like to practice. And so my wife and I are always, trying to encourage him. He's also a good athlete, so we encourage him. He's also a wonderful devotee, so we always encourage him, pick up your japa bag, chant your rounds. And so it requires that. We need to have in our life that voice of encouragement, right? That voice that sits on our shoulder. And it's important to have that. I think they call it a lifeline. So, Prasanna, if you're really feeling that need, have a lifeline, a person you can call up and can give you a pep talk.
That would be you?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Sounds good to me.
I'm at your service, as I said. That would be a blessing for me.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone have any other comment or question? Realization? All right, folks. It was a joy having your association today. Thank you so much for being with me and all the others. And have a happy, healthy, and holy week. This is a very wonderful week. Saturday is the celebration of Janmashtami, Krishna's appearance. So, try to do something that will help you remember Krishna. And the next day is the celebration of Vyas Puja, or the appearance of Srila Prabhupada. So it's a really full opportunity, full weekend to engage your mind solely and wholly on an object of meditation, Krishna. Okay, so we'll see you next Tuesday. And again, have a happy, healthy, and holy week.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Jai Jai.